So with that, I will hand this over to Pat.
Thank you, Caitlin. I will let you know where I'm from and some other details in the chat when Mark is speaking, so I don't occupy time with that right now. I've been involved with Ecovillage to some extent since the 1990s. Have been wanting to get up here forever, it seems like. And in 2007, I joined the just forming tree planting group. And my house was finally completed in 2014, and that's when I moved into my house. We had 3 general goals: sustainability, affordability, and accessibility. And we've been working towards those. We haven't necessarily achieved them as much as we possibly could, but we continue to work towards those. It's a beautiful location at the top of a hill, and unfortunately doesn't have a view of the lake, but you can go just down the hill and see parks at the lake. It's also close to local farms. So one of the benefits of living here is fresh food, availability of fresh and nutritious food. I think that's more and more becoming an important aspect of living here to me. It's also close to outdoor activities, lots of parks, chances to cross-country ski and hike, or even just walk or bike in some beautiful locations. I was, let's see, I was 62 when I moved up here. And a lot of my 60s was involved with helping to plan and make our community, our neighborhood, a reality. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, a great chance to get to know people pretty well. And as is inevitable with groups like ours, people would come and stay for a while, and then they, for whatever reasons, various reasons, they would have to move on. But we have some very interesting neighbors here, and talented neighbors. And one of the benefits, I think, in particular, with getting older, I'm in my 70s now, is that the committee meetings that we need to participate in to make our community work provide a chance to become closer to people, provide social opportunities. People can join committees according to their interest. And so you have a group of people, for example, Mark and I are both involved with gardening and landscaping and the land partnership for the larger land that EVI and the village associations own, rather than just the individual neighborhoods. And it's a great social opportunity. We have a lot of fun. Also, a major advantage that I'm appreciating more and more is that if you should have need for surgery, or if there's an illness where you need help, you have neighbors close by who always are willing to help get food for you, run errands. I know during COVID, we had some families who had to isolate for a while. People were willing to get their mail, that sort of thing. We have had a couple of people, unfortunately, who were terminally ill, one in particular in our community, who needed a pretty intensive care towards the end of her life. And neighbors actually stepped in to do that. And it was a large commitment. And I'm not promising that that could happen for everyone. This is not a retirement assisted living community. It's where you can get some voluntary help from neighbors and friends who live here. Also, a great advantage if I do drive, and I drive well. I'm not feeling that I'm going to have to start driving anytime soon, but you never know. If I run out of something in the middle of a recipe that I'm making, if I run out of milk and there's a snowstorm going on, I can get on the email, the community-wide email system, and ask if anybody has a cup of milk. And almost always you could find what you're looking for, whether it's food or, gee, I'm looking for rain slickers for children that are age so-and-so, and most likely one or two will turn up from your neighbors, people getting rid of things. We just had a large textile collection effort that was really a pretty big effort in order to save worn out textiles from being thrown in the trash. These are going to be recycled in many ways. And you know, the whole community was free to look in the boxes and see if there's anything that they could use. We also have a reuse room where people can put things that they no longer need. And that's a great advantage too. You can survive pretty well without having to go buy a lot of things if you want to. We can also, I think I mentioned rides. We just had a woman who had a knee replacement, and she needed rides to her various appointments, and they happen through online website or online database. I don't know what it is called, lots of helping hands, and people could sign up to help. And I think most of her slots were filled from people who know her. Meals, community meals. Each of the neighborhoods usually has a couple of meals that are open to the rest of the neighborhoods. And you can sign up online at a website called Gather if you want to participate in a meal. And people can now go and take out if they sign up, or they can go and eat in the various dining rooms where these meals take place. And there's a committee for that. The head cooks are in a committee. They decide, they take the responsibility, they find shoppers, they ask for assistant cooks to do the chopping and peeling. And on the whole, the meals are really good. One of the reasons that I wanted to come here was to help me, nudge me towards more vegetarian way of eating. And I found that vegetarian meals can be really delicious. And so if I'm tired at the end of the day in my 70s after doing something all day, and there's a meal on, I can just go over and get a meal, a hot meal, and also socialize. It's a chance to socialize. And if I want to go, I enjoy a lot of music things, concerts. Ithaca is, for a small town, has a wealth of cultural activities. And there's Ithaca College has a really good music school. Cornell has a music school, and they usually sponsor some, and a lot of these are free. You can go hear wonderful concerts, and I can almost always find somebody who wants to go listen to classical music with me. So those are the advantages I could think of. There are some challenges. The climate here can be a challenge, especially as I'm getting older. I really have a hard time sometimes getting myself to go out shopping when it's snowing and icy. We're starting to get more icy conditions with climate change, I think. And we are run by volunteers. All our committees are volunteers, including the snow shoveling. And so we need, we have a person who reminds everybody who volunteered to shovel at the beginning of the season to get out there. And it works pretty well. It really does. But still, icy sidewalks can be a challenge. And it's always a good idea to have something like, what are the things you put in your feet? Yak tracks, or even poles, and stabilizers is another thing you can put on your shoes and boots, just to be sure that you don't fall. One thing that's been a challenge for me is that each of the neighborhoods has its own common house, which has common facilities, which is nice. It's a really nice social draw for everybody, and practical as well. And we have shared laundry rooms. So Tree has a laundry room. We have, how many units do we have?
We have 40 units.
40
residents,
units,
yeah.
okay. We have 3 washers and 3 dryers for 40 units. And you can sign up during part of the week, and part of the week is first come, first serve. But my house is kind of at the end of a path, and I have a long walk to take my laundry to get it done. So it's not as convenient as having your own washing machine, washer and dryer in your house. I used to be able to throw loads of laundry in, and while I'm doing something else, do that. But now I have to go back and forth between the common house. That's something of a challenge. And with 40 units using the laundry, there's, and you know, monthly anyway, if not bi-weekly, issues with the laundry. It needs to be clean. There's committee for that oversees the laundry room. And you know, it's just use common courtesy, keep it clean, that sort of thing, which can sometimes be annoying to me when I'm not feeling my best. Also, we have a half-a-mile road into our village, which is kind of nice because we're isolated from Route 79, which is one of the main routes into and out of Ithaca. And the only thing is, it's only partly paved, partly because of cost, I think. So the part that is not paved, because of the climate, develops potholes. And it is worked on at least twice a year. We have heavy machinery coming in and smoothing it out and getting rid of the potholes. And right now we're all praying for the day that happens. So that's one disadvantage. You just have to be careful driving in and out. We also have mailboxes at the main road. So that means if you want to mail a letter there, you can on your way out. You need to, a lot of people walk during good weather, walk down to the mailboxes. So that's like a mile walk, which is nice. But during bad weather, or if you're tired or in a hurry, you need to either drive down there or remember to pick up your mail on your way back in. Also, there is not covered parking for every unit. There are some carports, which I think are mostly spoken for now, are all spoken for. And there is a cost to leasing a carport, and a monthly leasing fee, which is like $7.50, which is no big deal. But chances are good that you would have to walk from your carport or parking lot, your assigned parking space, into your unit. There's some considerations for people with small kids or people who are handicapped. We have some handicap spaces, and we have 3 or 4 handicap parking carports. But again, that was another issue, especially in bad weather, having to walk back and forth. And finally, we fortunately have trash and recycling collection. Here we have big dumpsters. We have recycling that's commingled. And sometimes it's a challenge to remind people to that some things don't get recycled. They actually do have to be thrown out. And we have compost, which is voluntarily maintained by a small committee, hardworking committee, mostly of one, but he has a couple helpers. And we have bins, and so that involves cutting things up in small pieces and so on. Anyway, there's a walk to the trash and the compost, which is what I was getting at, as maybe being a little less convenient than would be the case with if you know you had a house with a garage attached and trash and compost in your backyard. We do have a new tree elders group. We started it mainly in trees so that we could fit it into our governance system, which we use something called sociocracy. You can look it up online. Dynamic governance is another name for it, which helps to spread the governance out among committees that we call circles. And anyway, this tree elders group was just formed a couple of months ago. And there are quite a few of us now who are in our 60s and 70s and even older. There's interest in this tree elders group, and our goal is to gather information about help that's available in the larger Ithaca community, and to learn about elder law and other things, and to start a ride share focusing on elders who need rides to doctor's appointments and things like that. So I think I'm about done. Mark, do you want to take over?
You're a hard act to follow, Pat. You covered a lot of territory there, and what you didn't do was to share something about your own academic training. You bring a wealth of knowledge about native plants and invasive plants, and we rely upon Pat to guide us in that score. She and I are both on the garden and landscape subcircle and on the PALS circle. PALS is plants, animals, and land stewards. So we're involved both around our tree neighborhood with plantings and upkeep of gardens and beautifying the neighborhood, but we're also involved beyond our neighborhood boundaries with the land that Ecovillage owns. Each neighborhood has its own boundaries, supposedly where they have jurisdiction, but then the rest of the land, about 150 acres, is Ecovillage, beyond the 15 acres that the houses are on. And that 150 acres has 3 or 4 farms and lots of forests. When we moved in here, well, before I get into when we moved in here, my name is Mark Piechota. My last residence was in Philadelphia. My wife and I moved up here to be close to our daughter and her marriage partner. And so we've lived here for 10 years now. I moved here in my late 60s, and now I'm older, but still vibrant and still active. As Pat said, we're a self-governing neighborhood, meaning committees and subcommittees to deal with all aspects of life. We only hire outsiders if there's some like some things that
Mhm.
need to be done that require some professionals. But most of the things we're doing ourselves, and we're working together on it. So, for example, if we need to remove invasive plants, we team up together and we go out in a work circle or work party and remove them. Uh, if we need to plant some trees up on the slope, we do that together, digging the holes, sheet mulching and watering. Um, so it keeps us young. Speaking of keeping us young, our neighborhood, um, the tree neighborhood, has about 70 residents, from 3-year-olds to 80-year-olds. So it's a multi-generational community, just like the other two. We probably have a few more what I call elders in our neighborhood than the others because our homes are built to be accessible, so that anyone who has mobility issues can feel comfortable coming in and living in these households. So of the elders, I was counting just the other day, we have about 70 residents, from children through up. And of those 70, about 23 of us are in our 70s or 80s. So it's a significant number. And as Pat said earlier, we came together a couple months ago and said we should form our own committee, an elders committee, to look at the needs of our generation. And in that first meeting, we had 24 people attending, throwing out ideas for needs and wishes. And by the end of the meeting, people were volunteering for things like creating medical visit companions, shopping assistants, meal trains, and other people doing research on medical alert devices, elder law. And there's a lot of activity around those things and a lot of energy. But meanwhile, we go from that committee to playing with the kids in the neighborhood. I'm fortunate enough with my wife, Pat, our grandkids, Quentin and Arlo, age 8 and 5, live about 200 yards away in the Song neighborhood. So we see them most every day. In fact, this morning at 7:35, I drove Quentin to his school. And the day before, I picked up Arlo from his daycare. So we see them a lot, play with them a lot. They keep us young. And as they say, if we knew grandchildren were so great, we'd have had them first. What else should I be saying? Moved here from Philadelphia. I had a career as an educational administrator and my wife as an elementary school teacher. We first met in Ithaca and we moved away to both Williamstown, Massachusetts, and then Philadelphia, but came back here because of family. We hadn't intended to come to Ecovillage. When we lived in Ithaca, we knew about Ecovillage being formed, but we never visited it because it was still under construction. It's just by happen chance that we came to stay at one of the bed and breakfasts in one of the other neighborhoods. And when we were there, we just fell in love with the atmosphere of the village, how the children were feeling safe and friendly. They weren't suspicious of strangers. We walked through the neighborhoods. It just felt wonderful. And for myself, it reminded me of the neighborhood that I grew up in Olean, New York, which had a lot of kids and a lot of adults that were doing a lot of things together. And that's what it feels like here. There's 100 households in Ecovillage and probably at least 200 residents. So you get to know a lot of people, and some people come and go, but it's a liveliness, particularly for village activities and the common meals. Common meals are typically a maximum of 50 people that might come to eat there. Many people take out, but it has, before COVID, it was wonderful to be eating meals together and at a different table each time and getting to know some of your neighbors. There's a lot of richness and expertise from people. One other thing that occurs to me, when we moved in to our new neighborhood, the land had been cleared and massaged into shape. And so the land was what are called stub grass all around. And we moved in and life got busy. And all of a sudden that stub grass was bushes. Invasive honeysuckle coming closer and closer to the neighborhood. And we said, wait, this is invasive. It's not animal friendly. It isn't supporting diversity of the biosystem. I don't have a history in working on the land or working in gardens, but I sure have developed an expertise since I've lived here. I know how to prune apple trees and plum trees. I know how to dig holes. I know how to put trees into this particular soil and find the best sheets of cardboard to put over the soil as the sheet mulch, and how to transport with a wheelbarrow lots of mulch and take advantage of the compost that Pat said we have piles of, and enrich the soil, and then using a water cart to water them in the summers. So that's become a love of mine, and regenerating the honeysuckle bush forest into oak trees and hickory trees. And so that's a whole area that I won't get into. So for me, I don't think I've ever been as happy living anywhere in my life as living here. With 200 residents, you find a group of people that you love, and other people you don't have much in common with. You say hi to, everybody's smiling, everybody's supporting, but there's always somebody that you connect with. And as Pat was also saying, very helpful using the internet. I asked the other week for anyone have any Cajun spice? I need some Cajun spice for a dish I was making. And Pat Pingel immediately responded, I have a jar, and I leave it on my front porch. Another neighbor said, I'm from New Orleans. I'll make you some right now. And she did that. So anyway, I think I've said enough, and I'll turn this over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Mark. That was great. Thanks, Pat. That was lovely. I just wanted to address a couple of things and some of the questions that came in through chat, and then we'll open it up to those who are here who might have questions. And I do ask folks to use the raised hand tool to help us sort of queue up people. But before we get to that, some things I've noticed too. So, the experience I can speak to at Ecovillage is more as a new resident. I've lived here 7 months, as a younger person, as an able-bodied person, as a person that currently works from home, those kinds of experiences. But I think it is important to reiterate that a lot of co-housing communities really do best when there's a diversity of ages, right? When there's multi-generational, intergenerational living, because we need, the able-bodied person to shovel the snow and do those kinds of things, but we also need people who may be retired and have more time to give for all those volunteer tasks and committees that it takes to keep our community going. So that's been my experience, is there's a lot of value for people who are older being here, because they have a lot of interests in staying involved for a lot of the reasons Pat and Mark both mentioned, from a physical standpoint, staying in shape, from a community and engagement standpoint, but also some people just have more time to give if they're no longer working full-time, and that's really valuable too. And one other thing I'll mention is that I'm really interested to hear what comes out of the newly formed committee around aging, because in my experience, things that will benefit a certain population, like the elder population, probably will also benefit the whole community. So there's one question that we had come in about a van or a shuttle bus. Do we have some kind of communal transport to help people get into town? That's not something we currently have, but I think that's something that's come up in that group and has come up in other ways, and that would be beneficial to the whole community. For example, I live without a car. Quite a few of my friends who recently moved to Ecovillage also live without a car. So I think there are things that are very specific to the elder population. I think there are other things that perspective brings that could be enhancements and be a good part of the evolution of our community as a whole. We did have a couple of questions I wanted to address verbally. So there was a question about how many common meals we have in our community. We have 3 neighborhoods. So each neighborhood offers a meal about once a week. So we typically have 2 to 3 meals a week on average. We also had a question about to flesh out the transportation question. We also have a couple of city buses or regional buses that service this area. We also have informal ride sharing and car sharing. So that is another infrastructure that happens here, where people help each other out with rides or let each other use cars for transportation. And then there was also a question about cost of living here. And I can start to answer that. If Pat or Mark want to jump in on that, please do. So in addition to, so we are cooperatives based. So we have 3 neighborhoods here. Each neighborhood is a cooperative as a legal entity, as a legal structure. And if you become a homeowner here, you become you're a shareholder. And so you do have your own household. And aside from that cost, right, of owning that home, we have monthly maintenance fees. So there is an additional cost that can range from about $600 to $800 a month that is additional to your rent or your mortgage that you're paying to live here.
And most of that fee is local taxes.
Yeah. And that's a very important point. So it might sound like a lot, but it includes a lot of things like trash and recycling and plowing of the roads and local taxes, internet service, lots of things are included there. So I wanted to go ahead and open this up for those of you who are here today, if there are further questions you might have, and it can be related to aging in community. It can be any topic that we might speak to about our particular community at Ecovillage of Ithaca. So feel free to raise your hand and unmute if you have a question.
I see
Christine. Yeah, go for it, Christine.
Hi. So I'm actually here with my mom, Judith, and my husband and I and my mom are hoping to move there in a couple of years. We have taken a tour there. Are there any homes available that have a in-law apartment? Is that a common kind of building situation there? And also sort of related to that, what would the average rental cost be for one of the tree common house studio or 1-bedroom apartments?
There's only one of those apartments that is being rented at this point. The rest are leased
Okay.
by owners. And in-law apartments, no, we have some, I'm thinking of Alicia and Marit live together with Alicia's son, but it's a 2-bedroom house and they make do with that. In the common house, there are 1, 2, 3, 6 of the apartments have 3 bedrooms. So they can function as in-law. Everybody is sharing the same kitchen in each apartment.
There are a couple of other examples.
7 of those 3-bedroom apartments.
Yeah, it can vary quite a bit. So everything here is ownership based. So if there are rentals available, it is because an owner has decided to rent. Either they are, having to live elsewhere or might be sharing the home as a rental. So we have on the Ecovillage of Ithaca website, there's a rentals and sales page. And for anyone interested in living in our specific community, you would have to check that fairly frequently because it changes a lot. The availability can vary quite a bit.
And Caitlin, I failed to mention Song, which has a number of its buildings seem to be built with the in-law apartment or a rental in mind.
Right. So we do have, each neighborhood has a different character, and the Song neighborhood, our second neighborhood, the homes are a little bit bigger, and because of the grade of the terrain and the slope, quite a few of them put sort of like basement units. Some are full apartments, some are kind of like half, may not have a full kitchen or something like that. So there are some options like that where a home could be shared by multiple households or multiple generations. But again, it would be subject to availability.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do we have other questions?
I would just add something. When Pat says if there's a distance between her house and the common house, you may think it's a half mile, but it's actually 50 yards.
Everything's relative, right?
Yeah.
I think I see Jane has a question.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. So I was curious about this educational component of the community. It's, being retired now for several years. I'm noticing that all of our communities struggle to different degrees to have community. And it's especially when one is retired that you start to see that your needs change. So I'm curious about the educational component. Is that a business, or is it something that you are doing? I mean, this is just generally leading question, but is it something that that Ecovillage is doing to keep the community vibrant and to get people involved in what the community strives to be?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll start to answer that. So the Thrive, which used to be called Learn at Ecovillage, has several functions. One of them is really a sharing outward of what we're doing here and helping other communities that might be forming or you know, people who are interested in sustainable design practices, passive house design, net zero energy, these kinds of things. So there's sort of that outward facing piece. We also are mostly facilitating tours. So we have a lot of people who are interested in coming here in person to see what we're doing and how we've set ourselves up. So that's another part of what we're doing is tours, and we're hoping to get back to offering experience weekends where people can come for a little bit longer time and experience in person what it might be like to live here. But the other side of that is what knowledge and experience and skills do we bring in for our own benefit in terms of our evolution as a community, you know, having critical conversations about things like aging and transportation and climate change. So it depends. And the other thing that is happening is more informal education, right? So there are so many amazing, talented people here that are doing great things. Like we have someone in Song who just wrote a book. He's a transportation engineer, infrastructure engineer who teaches at Cornell, and he's going to have a book talk, you know, that he's sharing sort of what he's been doing. Pat and Mark are part of our land partnership group, and they've started to offer walks around the land and helping people identify invasives and tree walks and things like this. So it's kind of an open, my answer is kind of broad because it really depends on what people are willing to offer or want to share in terms of knowledge and resources. But also if I hear, you know, certain topics or things that people are interested in my role with Thrive, I can also begin to work on providing resources like that.
And I would just build on what you just said, Caitlin. The education is educating ourselves. So Caitlin mentioned book groups and sharing, and my wife has initiated a number of book groups focused on this book, Regeneration. I don't know if many of you know of this, by Paul Hawkins. Excellent book. It's a follow-up of his book, Drawdown. If you're concerned about sustainability, this is the book to read to energize and motivate you. So we have about 12 or 14 book groups reading this, groups of 4 or 5 people in each group sharing, and it's really making a difference for the culture and the focus of our neighborhood, reminding people that we are an eco-village and we're committed to sustainability. So that's just another example of us educating ourselves and inspiring ourselves.
And I think we're also in an advantage being in a college town, right? So having Cornell, having Ithaca College, there are amazing resources here for people to, for continuing education and things like that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that broad answer. I really understood it, and I have a better sense of so does the Thrive component operate by committee like the other committees?
It's a unique situation where it's a nonprofit entity we are housed under an umbrella group. So we're housed under a 501c3 umbrella
Gotcha.
that provides our administrative needs, and we have an advisory board. So there's some members of Ecovillage who are involved with that. But we also have some folks who are not Ecovillage residents who are engaged with Thrive as well. I'm seeing
And just,
oh
I'm
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
Just
okay.
one other quick mention for Mark. So I'm a holder of 2 copies of this book called The Carbon Almanac, which you may have heard of, but it's a really overwhelming movement based on the concept that it's not too late relating to climate change. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to get to a couple of questions that came in through the chat. So let me just I'll go backwards. So clarifying question about the maintenance fee, the 600 to 800 per month. So I was a renter. I recently bought a home here, but I was renting for 6 months, and my rent included a lot of those fees. So my landlord would use my rent to cover those maintenance fees, and we would split the things like energy, electricity and energy bills equally among the household. So that is a little bit of clarifying on that. It will depend on your lease and what arrangements you have with your landlord. There's a question about the design of homes. So our homes vary from neighborhood to neighborhood depending on the technology that was available at the time, but we have some principles that are standard across the community. So homes must have a southern orientation and take advantage of passive solar design principles. The homes are all highly insulated, tight envelopes, energy efficient, smaller volumes in a lot of cases to reduce the amount of energy needed to heat and cool. The question specifically I saw is about natural ventilation, and the ventilation does vary from home to home. There's some neighborhoods and some homes that were better designed for natural ventilation, but with things like passive house, that's a whole other system of design that that Pat and Mark could speak to more acutely if you wanted to get into the weeds on that. So the natural ventilation question is going to vary quite a bit. And we've noticed with climate change, we are getting more hot days or extreme hot weather in the summer. It's still, upstate New York is still in a pretty good place when it comes to impacts of climate change, but we are getting more households that are installing heat pumps to begin to deal with more summer weather. The design of the homes do very well in the winter and the colder weather. Where we're having some lessons learned is around summer and ventilation. I see the students from University of Minnesota had a lot of questions. I think I'm going to try to address your questions in a follow-up email, if that makes sense, or at the end if we have time.
Yeah, Caitlin, if I can jump in, I'd just like to say TREE was really aiming towards passive house design, which means we're the latest neighborhood to be built. So we have very thick walls, very well insulated. And we actually have a couple of homes here that got the passive house certification. A lot of us, actually most of us, have PV panels on the roof. A lot of us also have solar thermal water, hot water. And because of the tight insulation, each unit has had to have HRVs or ERVs, which is constantly running ventilation, bringing, and their heat exchangers as well, constantly bringing fresh air in and exhausting the stale air. And that's an education to learn how to use and maintain those units, because you can adjust how much air coming in.
That's a good segue. We had a question about indoor air quality. Do either of you want to talk about what indoor air quality things have come up in the village?
Well, I know in TREE, we really strived to use building materials that were local and low off-gassing. So a lot of us have kitchen countertops that are wood. And we had, some of us have cork floors, some have even bamboo floors.
And people like us have cement floors.
Yeah, right, cement floors.
And there have been, I think there is skill or knowledge set around knowing how to live in a passive solar home and a passive house home. So there have been in some homes issues with mold and mildew. So there's some work that's had to be done depending on the situation to kind of correct for some of those issues.
And that's in
But
the
we do
frog
also
mode.
have we do also have quite a few people in this village who have sensitivities, and so there's an awareness in the village around that. For example, all of the common houses are fragrance and scent free. For that reason, you know, if we have designated fire circle areas on our property, and those are placed to not prevent issues for people who might have sensitivity to smoke or things like that. So there are awarenesses around this.
And we don't have wood burning stoves. We didn't allow those. There are a couple of units that have very, I don't even know, one is what, a porcelain
I
stone
don't know, actually.
stove. Yeah, but they're the kind of stoves that were planned into that construction that emit virtually no pollutants. And 3 has we have no indoor gas ranges. And
Yeah, so
we also need to, are told we need to regularly monitor for CO2 levels, even though just to make sure our ERV units are running, and we have those available to borrow.
right. So we have about 10 minutes left in the session. I'm gonna get to a couple more questions that have come in through chat, but I think it's important to mention that we are still tied to the grid. So we have town infrastructure when it comes to water, sewer, electricity, natural gas. The first 2 neighborhoods were built with natural gas. The third neighborhood, there is a conscious decision to be all electric. And the first neighborhood is now going through a process to decarbonize as well. So that's part of our evolution as the 3 neighborhoods have been developed. You know, getting a better and better understanding of the most sustainable and most appropriate technologies to use, and addressing, you know, getting off of fossil fuels. Let's see, I see a question about prospective resident process. I'll just briefly touch on that unless there's a more specific question about that. So we have a prospective resident committee, and on the website for Ecovillage, there's a living here page. So that's the best place to start if one is interested in living in this community. We have a checklist of things we ask people to go through, and that's to help you learn about our community, and also to try to get a sense of, you know, is it a good fit for you? So we have a team, a volunteer team that can work with you to go through that checklist and meet those requirements. One of the requirements is to come here in person and experience this place in person for about 5 days, and ideally volunteer, attend common meals and other events. And once someone has completed that prospective resident process, you're in a much better position to be able to act on a rental or sale opportunity. So when a property goes for sale, it's listed internally first for a week. And then after that, anyone who's completed the prospective resident process, we do get in touch with them and let them know that a property is available. So it does benefit you to complete that process if you're serious about trying to live here. I wanted to just, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, our commitment to sustainability is always challenged by our transportation system. People feeling the need for cars to get up and down the hill and all around. And there's a conscious movement toward electric vehicles. And as Caitlin said earlier, attempts at car sharing, but almost all the parking areas of Ecovillage now have capability to charge electric cars. And so I see a growing number of electric cars throughout the village. I'm complete for now.
There's a question about cost per month to heat our homes in Tree. I can give a brief answer to that. My home is a duplex, 2 bedrooms, 1,100 square feet, and it's all electric. And the highest bill that I had this winter was around $150, I think. And the solar panels don't work real well when they're covered with snow. So usually during the coldest, snowiest months, the cost goes up. In the summer, typically it falls to just about $17 a month. During that time, my panels are pumping energy into the grid, and I get credit for that. And that's applied in the winter time then. Hope
And
that
typically the $17 a month is what we just pay to the state NYSEG for the privilege of connecting to them. It's not our usage as much as
right.
their carrying fee.
So, I see a follow-up question about the 5-day stay is for prospective residents. So the 5 days doesn't have to be consecutive. You could fulfill that requirement incrementally, and you do not have to stay on property either. So we have a couple of B&Bs and Airbnbs here at Ecovillage. We also have the opportunity to camp on property in the good weather, but one could also stay locally in town or things like that as well. Were there any other questions people wanted to raise in the about 5 to 10 minutes we have left? I see Anne. Yeah.
Hey, everyone. You said we could stay off property for the 5 days, but is there a possibility we could immerse totally and stay on property during that time? I understand we need to pay extra, but is that a possibility?
Yes, it's possible if there's availability at one of the B&Bs or Airbnbs.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Good.
Yeah.
Also, is there any air conditioning in any of the units for the hot weather months?
It varies. So people who've put in heat pumps, most of those are air source heat pumps, and they can provide heat or cooling. Some people have portable air conditioning units that they've used in their homes. I don't know. Did the Tree homes include air conditioning? I don't think so,
No,
right?
No.
A number of us in Tree now have air source heat pumps that provide both our heat and our cooling.
Okay,
They've been a nice addition.
great, thanks.
A lot of us also have ceiling fans, which can make a huge difference.
Sure. Okay, great.
Any
Thank you.
last questions before we wrap up? Well, I guess I could take a few moments then to address the questions from Peter, Jada, and Jason. Are you guys still here? Yes, I see you. So you had some questions about irrigation and soil erosion.
And Caitlin,
yeah.
if it's okay with you, I will sign off now.
Okay, sure.
And a
Thanks,
pleasure,
Mark.
everyone. Hope to see
Thanks,
you
Mark.
again.
So I guess I'll start with the question of why we have multiple neighborhoods. So we have 3 neighborhoods for several reasons. So it's very expensive and time consuming to develop co-housing communities. Some of you might be aware of or be part of groups that are trying to form communities, and it just takes a lot of effort and financing. So some of it's just that factor, right? That they started with the first neighborhood, the 30 households, because that was what was manageable and buildable. And so it's been an incremental process. The original plan for this community was 5 neighborhoods. And after the 3rd neighborhood, we've decided to stop there for a few reasons. Again, it takes a lot of time and money to develop. The other reason is scale. So we have 100 households, approximately 250 people. And some people feel like that is reached a scale where it's difficult to have community and know everyone and build relationships with everyone. But each of the 3 neighborhoods, as I mentioned, has different building technologies that have been used. So the first neighborhood has double wall construction, has the passive solar. The second neighborhood is using structurally insulated panels and straw bale construction. The 3rd neighborhood decided to be all electric and use passive house. So there's that factor as well, right? That each neighborhood was an opportunity to try something different and do something according to what technology and knowledge was available at the time. What else can I get to right now? We do not have, as far as I know, we do not have smart irrigation systems. Pat, is that correct?
I don't know of any either, unless
Yeah.
they're using Sundown and West Haven Farm, which is
Right.
a
So
CSA.
we haven't talked a lot about the farms. We do have 4 farms on this property. We do not farm as a community. We do not own and operate those farms. So those farms are entities that lease the property from Ecovillage and have their own farming operations. So I can't speak to what irrigation systems they're using, other than most of them have ponds, so rain-fed ponds that they're using for supplemental irrigation, in addition to, again, being hooked up to the town water system. We do have some rain barrel use here. It's not extensive, but we have community gardens for each neighborhood, and some of the community gardens are using rain barrels to supplement the irrigation for gardening. We don't have a lot of soil erosion issues here. So when we first designed the property, there were soil surveys, soil information, and that was used to locate the farms. So we wanted to make sure the farms were on the best agricultural soils and parts of the property to thrive. And so the homes are sort of on the highest point of the property, which tends to be rockier, less fertile soil. But yeah, as far as I know, we don't have a ton of like washout, soil erosion, those kinds of issues in our case.
I could add something there
Sure.
too. Also, New York State has pretty stringent stormwater prevention and management requirements. So we have for tree, we have a stormwater management pond so olive tree drains into that pond, which was constructed as like 2 deep pits with shallow areas around the edge. So it now has become great blackbird habitat, red-winged blackbird, with lots of cattails and other critters that like wetlands. But it's periodically the drainage is evaluated, and we get recommendations about how we should keep weeds out of ditches and things like that.
I think another thing that's unique about our community compared to a typical, suburban American construction is we are very dense. So most of the homes are duplexes, the footprints are smaller. So that's one way that we're more sustainable. That again, the homes are smaller, the volumes are smaller, so the energy consumption is less. but we also have less impervious surface, right? So the amount of runoff that we're generating in the built portion of our property is less because the homes are more densely built, smaller homes. I mentioned too, there's a question about how are we sustainable? So passive solar is another big component, using the natural sun to light and heat the homes. And then again, all of the homes are highly insulated and very tight envelopes. But we also, you know, we don't have mandates and rules around these things, but there's not very much pesticide use, manicured lawns, those kinds of practices, right? There's a lot of our land that is pretty naturalized and you know, yes, we have some invasive species and things like that, but a lot of the land is left unbuilt. We have a cap of 10%. Our zoning is specific to our land, and we capped ourselves at 10% built land. So that's another sustainable mission for us, is having land under conservation, land that is left to be natural. So we have trails, we have the farms, and all of that is available for residents to take advantage of and add to our quality of life. I see a couple more questions that I'll get to, and then we'll have to end. So in terms of common spaces, so each neighborhood has a common house, and that's where you have kitchens, dining area, laundry, sitting rooms. There's a library, there's a DVD library, there are chest freezers, there's a mat room for yoga and exercise, there's a multi-purpose room, kids' playrooms, and some offices and guest rooms. So those are all amenities that are shared, and it's another thing that makes it easier to have smaller homes, and reduce some of the cost of your living and the amount of space you might need. And the final question I see about swimming in ponds. So 2 of our ponds are for things like swimming and ice skating and those kinds of things as well. So I think I'm going to end there. I just want to share quickly what's coming up for us. So we have we have so many chat boxes open. We have some upcoming programs. So the Thrive website will have all the things coming up that are online and in person. We have a 10 steps to climate-wise gardening with one of our residents. That's an online program. I see the date here is wrong. That's actually next Monday, the 10th at 7 o'clock. But we also hold these Q&As monthly. So this is the first Wednesday of the month at noon. There's a chance we might reschedule the May one to a weekend time, but typically go to our website to look for the upcoming Q&As. And next month, we're focusing on livelihoods and cottage industry. So we'll have a couple of people who run businesses out of Ecovillage who can share their perspective on that. We also have in-person tours happening 3 or 4 times a month. So you're welcome to look into that and come take a tour. And then we also have a forest therapy walk coming up this weekend if you happen to be in town or nearby. And then I just share here our website, which is thriveithaca.org, so you can stay abreast of the things that are happening with us. And I'll thank Pat and Mark for their time today. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. And we will be posting these monthly Q&As on our YouTube channel as well. So I will be posting on socials and our newsletter and that sort of thing as those resources become available, so you could see other questions that people have asked at other sessions. All right. Thanks, everyone.